Welcome to The Human Experience, a podcast about the stories we live out every day and the importance of championing the vulnerability and courage of the storyteller. I'm your host, Jennifer Peterkin, and it was through my own lived story of experiencing domestic violence that this podcast was created. By traveling the globe and interviewing each guest in person, I am convinced now more than ever that stories have the power to change the world. You can join our community of storytellers by subscribing, leaving a rating and review, signing up for my newsletter, following me on Instagram, and more. Thank you for being here. In a world full of noise, to listen with intention is an act of resistance. Episode 56 of The Human Experience is Dawn's story. Dawn Hawkins is the CEO of the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, an organization based in Washington, D.C. that exists to advocate for victims and survivors of sexual violence and to end commercial sexual exploitation through research, litigation, policy change, education, and victim support. Dawn began with NCOSE as a volunteer, and it was through her desire and willingness to make a difference that she's in the position she is today. A brief content warning before we begin. This episode contains conversations around sexual violence, exploitation, pornography, and abuse. Please proceed with care. This episode was recorded in Washington, D.C. So, Dawn, you are the executive director, CEO of the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. A very interesting line of work, very difficult line of work, I imagine. So how did you get into that? What is your story behind that?
Ooh, good question. Well, I would say I had some really clear experiences when I was younger that just led me to be like, I'm an abolitionist and I want to end sexual abuse and exploitation completely. So we all have like childhood stories. We've all been exposed to this way too young, and it shapes you. And the research all points to it. But I remember I think it was 7th grade, and I got to middle school early. The bus dropped me off, and I went to my group of friends. And at that point in the morning, for some reason, it was only the boys. Like, only the boys were there. I was the first girl to arrive, and I walk up to the circle, and they were talking about a sex act that had happened the night before with a girl that I really liked and respected and, you know, had high regard for. And the boys were just mocking her, and they were saying horrible things and joking about it. And I didn't even know what that sex act was at that age. I hadn't heard of it. And when they explained to me, and, you know, I was the big joke because I didn't know yet what it was. Yeah. And then they showed me on their, you know, on a video, and it changed me. I suddenly felt like I'm not the same as them. Like, it felt like we're girls and boys and we're this, like, we have the same opportunities. Suddenly I was like, no, we don't. And it just created this like sense of injustice that I needed to fight against. And so I think that was really pivotal. And then later I was living in Hungary, and I was doing service. There's actually a missionary for my church, and I lived there for 18 months. And it was the best and the worst of times, really? I'll say honestly. But while I was in Hungary, I was sexually assaulted a few times by just men on the street or men on like the metro. And also we taught English, and a number of women who came for the free English courses, they were being prostituted, and they told us about their life and about what it was like. And I just saw like this connection between sex trafficking and prostitution and the like sexual violence that I experienced, and then the pornified culture, because pornography was everywhere. It was like on billboards, it was on front pages of newspapers. And I thought, this is all connected and we need to do something about it. And when I get back to the United States, maybe this is what I should work on. Okay. And so I started volunteering. I found this organization. I don't know. I'd been back a few months, and I moved to Washington, D.C. for work, and they happened to be in D.C. And I was like, begged them to let me help and volunteer. And they said yes. So
that's amazing. So you started as a volunteer.
I did.
That's
I volunteered
incredible.
for 2 years.
That's such a good story, because I feel like there's barriers to access, right? In a lot of different areas, in a lot of different ways. And so you are now the CEO and you started out as a volunteer. I feel like, I mean, not to diminish anything you've done in between, but just for people to hear, like, you can start somewhere and not have any idea where it's going and end up in a totally different place. And it could be like your life goal and mission and be, that could be who you are. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
I do have to say, so I lived in Romania.
No way.
Yes.
So you probably know like so many similar.
Yes.
Cultural things.
So, and then I wanted to ask you about your first story. How old were you?
Mm-hmm. I think I was 7th grade.
7th grade.
Yeah. So like 11.
Okay.
I think 12.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you went to Hungary, were you out of high school then?
I was 22.
Okay. So you had graduated college.
I had worked already a year or two and then went there.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Mm-hmm. So you come back here, you begged them to let you volunteer in your words. So what does that look like being a volunteer for this space?
Yeah.
How do you say the acronym, don't you? NCOSE. Okay, I'm going to start doing that because trying to do the whole thing every time is really throwing me off. So what does volunteering with NCOSE look like? What did that look like for you?
So, okay, we're 62 years old. And what happened was the movement to combat pornography and to connect all of these dots was failing and it was crumbling. And there was almost nobody left who was really working on these issues. So what happened was I got connected with Patrick Truman, who just retired in December. We had 15 years together, but he had this vision to try to get it going again and to unite the feminists and the kind of faith-based groups. Because for decades, they were not working together. They cared about the same things, but they were rather at odds. And so the idea was like, man, we're losing. The internet came and just things explode. The problem exploded. Is there anything left to do? And his vision was, let's unite them and we can make a difference if we join together. And when he told me, that's why I joined. Because I think that's my calling in life is to try to unite people who have such different perspectives on things for social good, for change. And these issues are not partisan. They don't affect faith-based or secular people differently. We're all really experienced and everyone is harmed by this. So anyway, he told me about that and I was like, oh my gosh, I am in. And so I helped to start a coalition, the Coalition to End Sexual Exploitation.
Okay.
And it was uniting the feminists and the faith-based groups on the issue of pornography and the media, sexually explicit media, rather. That's what I did. I organized some events to bring them together. I had a lot of conversations. And then I just tried to learn all I could. I read research and stuff. And I tried to gather research because the problem was it's hard to understand. Who's going to step back and read 100-page research article? How do we make that accessible to the general public? So I helped to try to synthesize research and join. So that's what I did for 2 years. And that coalition is going so amazingly well. So it was very successful immediately. Those two different sides caught the vision and really key leaders in both sides, they wanted to join together. And so then pretty much within a year and a half, we expanded the coalition to focus on groups that are focusing on all issues of sexual abuse and exploitation. Because one of the problems has historically been that if you're fighting child sexual abuse, that's all you're fighting. And you're not interacting with the groups fighting sex trafficking. And really, we believe you can't solve these problems in a silo and we have to break those down. And so I can tell you some really great stories about the first conference we had where all these different people came together. Okay, I'll tell you one.
Please tell me. Tell me all the stories.
So one was the night before the first conference we had that was bringing people together. And also our next one is in August and December. Now it's so much bigger. The CEASE Summit. But so first one, the night before we had a special dinner and I invited the key stakeholders, the key feminists and the key faith-based leaders who I thought they're going to be the ones that make this possible. Let's have dinner together. I had just had a baby And so I was like running to take care of my baby. And we didn't think about where people should sit. So what happened was like 3 of the feminists sat across from 3 Catholic priests.
Oh, gosh. Oh, my.
I know. Can you imagine? And what you're imagining is what happened. So I am like with my baby at the side of the restaurant. One of the leading feminists comes to me and she's like, Dawn, I don't know what we were thinking. We can't do this. I'm done. I can't even be here tomorrow. And I'm like, wait. And what had happened was they changed their conversation. They started talking about like women's equality and marriage and like all these issues that like just weren't the goal of the summit. Right. So I went and joined and I was like, guys, please, let's remember why we're here and what we're working on. Let's put aside our other differences. And they agreed. And the most amazing thing happened. Like the next day we had a whole day of conference meetings and we had a dinner at night with everyone, all the attendees, and anyone could pick where they sit. And I go and I'm like, where are they? Are they still hating each other? And I look over and they're sitting together at the same table. And I walk up and they're laughing and they're like, they're just loving each other and they're deep in strategy discussion. And they went on to do like really incredible things together, like campaigns together and impacted a lot of people. And I just think like it takes bringing people together in person to like recognize the humanity that we have.
100%.
Things in common.
The power of proximity, as Brian Stevenson says. But I love that because it is such a great visual representation of the fact that we may have differences, but if we choose to find our commonalities with each other, that is a stronger bond than the dislike or the distrust that comes with difference.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I see it again and again and again. We all can unite on these issues for human dignity.
Yeah,
really.
I'm sure. I mean, what you're doing is so polarizing in several different ways, but to be able to bring people together, I'm sure you have crazy stories about the kinds of people that you've been able to bring together that you never thought would be in the same room with each other, which I think is fabulous. I do a lot of advocacy work for domestic violence, and I agree with you in that people seem to split into sectors of what they're going to approach. And I get it. Like it feels like such a big bite to take to kind of address everything. And you're met with such resistance to certain things, right? And so it can feel really intimidating to say, okay, I'm going to not just focus on this area of interpersonal violence, but, also sex trafficking. And, there's a lot there. But I think it is really important that there is a common goal, a common thread, and that we all remember that when we're doing justice and advocacy work, because human dignity, as you said, is the goal for everybody and the most important thing.
Yes. Okay, so I feel like my unique role in this movement is to like collect or unify the voices that are outraged that sexual abuse and exploitation is happening, who want to demand a better world, a better culture. And a lot of the problem, like the issue is that a lot of us feel alone and we feel like we just have to accept it. This is the status quo. I can't make a difference. And that's what I think I'm here to do, is show that we can, especially when we find each other. And so one of my first experiences when I was volunteering, I don't even know if I was volunteering yet. I think it might have been at the beginning, but I went to Barnes and Noble and I was studying for a graduate school test there at the cafe. And I looked over, and at Barnes and Noble, they'll have like books on the floor, and they had like all these children's books and coffee table books together in the same stand. And one of the coffee table books was Playboy. And if you open it, it was like full on nudity, huge pictures, huge spreads. And next to all the kids' like books and toys, I was outraged. I was so mad about this. So I went to the manager. I asked for the manager. And the manager looked at me like I was absolutely crazy. And he was like, no, we're not going to do anything about that. This is how it is. And I was just so mad. And I left feeling like hopeless. Like I imagine so many people feel that we just have to accept that. And this woman followed me out. I didn't even know. She like heard me, and she had a stroller, and she caught me in the parking lot, and she thanked me for saying something. And she said like she feels the same, but she never thought she could speak up. And then I thought, holy cow, we should start something. So I took it home and like started a social media campaign that like against Barnes and Noble and blah, blah, blah. And it worked. Actually, they like made some big changes. That was like my first victory. But from that, I realized like, we just have to unite our voices. And so like later I was not long. This was like my first year actually as executive director here. We started a campaign against all of the hotels who were selling pornography and making tons of money. But the pornography that they were selling was like extremely racist, incest, like horrible themes, child themes, like the hotels. And so we started this campaign, and Hilton was one that we first went after. And the CEO of Hilton, his assistant called us and said, can you stop? We're getting 1,000 emails a week because we got the executives' emails. We're like, fill out this form and it goes directly to them. And it was because of that summit, the first summit. That was like the action we asked everybody to take. It's very cool.
That's
how
amazing.
It all came together. And we said to the executive assistant, I said, we'll stop it if you meet with us.
Okay.
So they invited us to come over to their office in like Herndon, Virginia. And we met with the CEO and some other executives. And when we showed them like the content that they were profiting from, they were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're doing this. And they stopped the next week.
Wow.
They stopped it. They lost millions of dollars from it. And because Hilton did it, like all of the other mega hotel chains, the 5 biggest hotel chains did it all around the world. It's like 2 million hotel rooms that are rented out a night that no longer have that at all.
Wow.
And then, we took it further, and like we and other NGOs also advocated for this. But like they have to do something to curb sex trafficking. And they started like robust trainings. They're doing, a lot of hotels are doing so much good now in this space. So I just like the power of our voices matter. And I have so many more, like with Google, I have many Google stories, but one of the first ones was they were running ads that were like sexually explicit ads. And so, you as a user would just suddenly get an ad served to you. This was like 2010, 11. And we thought they're profiting from all of this, like prostitution websites and pornography websites were running it. And they were serving up kids. We know kids are getting these ads too. And if you click on it, they're exposed. Anyway, we went to Google, and Google had this like dog and pony show for us, but all they're doing for good. And then I'm like, hang on a second. And I brought with me like 5 other groups to represent huge like networks. And at the end again, Google said, okay, we're parents too. This is wrong. We shouldn't be doing this. And literally the next week they changed their policy around ads. And they, since then, like since 2011, 12, they haven't allowed any ads for sexually explicit content and stuff. So our voices matter.
That's incredible. I mean, before we started, you mentioned grassroots efforts, and that's just what kept running through my mind, especially when you said about the email thing, like just the power that people have when they are organized to do something. And I think it's so poignant to talk about, especially in the time we're in now, where division is at an all-time high. Yeah. Everybody has their opinions and their life experience and their lens that they're looking through. But with the advent of the internet and social media, I just feel like there is such a bigger, the stakes are higher, right? Like they've never been like this. And it's all just feels like it's coming to we're on a train that is headed towards a bridge that's collapsed, and not to say that it's all doom and gloom, but I think that it is really interesting to talk about what people are willing to put aside to get together for a common goal and to work towards a common end, especially something that affects something that we can all agree on, bipartisan. Everybody is going to agree that children need to be taken care of. Like that is something that everybody agrees on. I mean, that's I won't put too fine a point on that, but you know what I mean. The general public agrees on that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's fantastic. So you mentioned, again, before we started, that grassroots efforts have been such a huge part of what you do here. Mm-hmm. And I know you've really started talking about that, but in what way have you been able to see specifically, I guess, policy change? Because I think that is such a huge issue for people. Politics is just brings everything to a screeching halt, especially nowadays. You work literally steps from the White House. Mm-hmm. So
oh my goodness,
what are you guys able to, how have you been navigating that?
So many exciting things this year, like maybe today, actually. So Congress has not passed any legislation for child online safety in 25 years. In 25 years. Exactly. And so a lot of our organizations have been just like pummeling Congress. They have to do something. I'm focused on the sexual abuse and exploitation issues, but what about eating disorders and the pharmaceutical problems and like the drug epidemic that's happening, fentanyl, the depression, the bullying, the like hate groups, like it's all attacking our kids because these social media platforms have designed these platforms allowing children on without children's safety in mind at all. Mm-hmm. They're serving up algorithms to our kids that are so dangerous. They're super addictive in nature. They're allowing like very harmful content to reach our children. They're allowing very harmful people to have direct open access to our kids. I mean, why are we fighting so hard to not allow like adults to send private direct messages to kids? Like that should just be common sense. But we had to fight mega hard to get Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, all of them to not allow that. And we have won so far, but it needs to be codified in law because next week, a new like TikTok is going to come on the scene, right? Okay. So we've been fighting for a solution. There's two really big ones. One's called the Earn It Act and one is called the Kids Online Safety Act. For a couple of years. And essentially, they're both different, but essentially we're calling for accountability of big tech to prioritize child safety and to design with safety in mind. But what's happened is like all these groups who are focused on child safety issues are joining together across the issues. All of these parents, like thousands and thousands of parents have joined together, have reached out to Congress, have demanded change. Many have shown up here. We've had like 4 or 5 advocacy days where we just like go pepper every office just in the last 6 months and rallies outside of the Hill. And this culminated on January 31st on the Senate Judiciary holding a hearing where 5 of the biggest tech CEOs came and they were grilled, equally like put on the spot by Republicans and Democrats. If you haven't seen this, it's crazy. Mark Zuckerberg was like basically pushed to stand up and apologize to all of these parents. Oh, this was like a moment that changed my life forever. We helped bring a number of parents. There were probably 60 whose children died after harms experienced online. And they came to D.C. on January 31st. And they brought pictures of their children and they stood up. Oh, you can see it. It's like the same moment of like when the tobacco industry started really being held accountable. This is like where the tech industry is finally going to be held accountable. This moment when the parents came and they held up pictures of their children who had passed away. And Mark Zuckerberg stood up and apologized to them. And I just think after that, like just days after that, 67 senators joined together as co-sponsors of the Kids Online Safety Act. 67.
Wow.
Can you believe that? It's going to pass. Congress is finally going to do something for child safety online, and tech is going to be held accountable to prioritize safety, not just dollars. So we expect it to pass the Senate like any day. It's been introduced in the House, and it has to pass there. The tech companies are trying to confuse the House, but we're working hard to pass that. But yes, what's the grassroots like?
Yes. Yeah, that's people-based. That is people that have rallied together.
And the youth. Oh my goodness. So many youth showed up.
I believe that. I absolutely believe that. Yeah. Why 25 years is wild to me,
isn't it? Yeah.
Especially because 25 years ago, the internet was barely
It was a baby.
anything.
It was a baby.
So I'm so glad to hear that this bill is going to pass. That's incredible news. What happened for 25 years? What is the reason, do you think, that they've been so slow on the uptake here?
Yeah. Well, I will say Congress did pass a couple bills in the early 2000s that were struck down by the Supreme Court. So I think that adds to their hesitancy to want to do something else. But the main point is that the tech industry has poured in millions and millions of dollars into DC and into all these campaigns. They own them, they have owned them. And we've had to just break that barrier. I mean, literally, I will walk out of a meeting in a Senate office and the tech industry is walking in. Apple and Google are walking in. Yeah. To advocate on the opposite side. And our side doesn't have millions of dollars to donate to these campaigns and cushy jobs to offer them when they are no longer in office, because that happens often too. And so I'd say that's really the reason. Congress hasn't had the courage. They haven't been forced to make it a priority until all these parents and all these young people said, this is destroying lives. And it's really hurting our country, and we need to do something about it.
Yeah. Not to get too far away from what we're talking about here, but I feel like more and more people are kind of waking up to this idea that maybe decisions have not been made in people's best interest, but because there was money behind it.
Yeah.
And not that's been a secret, but I think more and more people are just okay, enough. Enough is enough. When are you going to have enough money, have enough stuff? And other people are so desolate and desperate, and poverty and abuse. And, so I feel like there is a lot of powerlessness that is felt. People feel powerless and hopeless. But I also feel like we are in a moment that is, I don't have anything else left to lose. And so here we go. Yeah, let's take on Google and Apple and all of it. And I think that anger can be such a powerful leading emotion, right? I mean, it's masking other things as well, but anger sometimes is a thing that drives you to your purpose. Yeah. And so I can only imagine who you have encountered over the years, the people and their stories, and the parents and the direct survivors and victims of sexual exploitation. What is it like to work in that sphere where you are seeing the same things happen over and over again, and maybe the needle isn't moving very far forward?
There's a couple of things I want to share with you. So what I've realized is that when people with lived experiences are the ones who are saying here's what the solution needs to be. If this was in place, this wouldn't have happened to me. That has to drive our advocacy. That's what drives my advocacy. And I think that it's what our movement needs. And so really listening and following and lifting others up who have these experiences and know the solution. So just a couple examples for I mentioned Instagram. Instagram was the first company that we got to stop allowing adults to send private direct messages to kids on their platform. And it was not easy. But what happened was in Washington, D.C., there's this incredible organization called Courtney's House, and they serve youth survivors of exploitation. And they provided just a drop-in place for them to come after school that's safe and on the weekends. And they, provide therapy and job training and help with your homework. They're so amazing. And they invited us over to meet with some of the youth to just hear about their experiences. And what I learned this was 2018, I think. What I learned was that these youth were all being sold on Instagram. And they opened their phones and they showed us. So they're in services, right? They're getting help. They've largely been like removed from the exploitation, yet their phones were still blowing up with sex buyers sending them direct messages, with pimps trying to get them to come back, begging them for explicit pictures, begging them to meet up in person. Some were like actually getting money sent to them on Snapchat. This was like Snap Cash era. And they're just like bombarded. I could not believe what I was seeing. And these youth said to me and to my colleagues, like, why is Instagram even letting these people message me? Like, I'm 13 years old. 13. They were 13. And we thought, why are they? And so we went with Courtney's house to Instagram. And we said, what the heck? Like, you've got to do better. Here's what's happening. Here's what our youth are seeing. We went to other youth serving organizations across the country and asked, and they were all having the same exact experience. We did a survey of like churches, of some church groups in different parts of the country, asking if these church-going youth were receiving like solicitations, and they almost all were.
Yeah.
Like unfounded solicitations for sex. Yeah. And anyways, the thing is, it was like that survivor who said, I know what the solution is. And will you just help me get it? And we did. And Instagram changed. And now all these other platforms have shifted too. When COVID hit, prostitution became, and sex trafficking became much harder. Like there wasn't street. It was like harder to meet up and stuff. What we found out, because survivors were telling us, was that traffickers were pushing their victims into the gig economy at the time for like those few weeks right after everything closed down. They were forcing them to work for Instacart and to drive for Lyft and for DoorDash and all of Uber and stuff. And no one could have known. No one could have known really that would happen or was happening. But because survivors spoke up and shared with us that this was happening, we were able to go to those companies. And I think all of them immediately instituted like, here's help and here's resources if this is happening to you in the app. Like they pushed messages to their drivers to like make sure that they had help. And what a better way, because also direct service providers couldn't reach these people anymore because COVID shut the world down. But the Uber app could reach you, right? The Instacart was like really the leader, I would say, in that gig economy. But we couldn't even have known if it wasn't for those with lived experiences driving the solutions.
That's incredible. I love that. And what I think I love most about that is that there is no hierarchy in that. You're not sitting here saying, well, we take into consideration what survivors have gone through, but ultimately, we have the power and the experience to blah, 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 get us through here. And I love that it's not a power grab. And unfortunately, I think that's what destroys so many things, including NGOs. And so to see how much grassroots you guys are still involved in after 62 years, and to see that you are committed to kind of gathering community around the cause, specifically seeking out survivors and their perspectives, I just think that's incredible and so, so worthy, because I've been in the nonprofit sector for a while. I did some work in nonprofit, and it's not all great. I think when you were talking about the kids getting messages, even while they were receiving services, I think one of the biggest things for people to wrap their heads around, if they're not in this sphere of advocacy in any way, and I've found the same for domestic violence, we have an image in our head of who is a victim and what a victim should behave like after they're victimized. And I think people would be absolutely shocked to know that their children have probably been victimized in some way or another, if they've been on social media, and that they may never know because nothing would change in such a way to alert them that they had been victimized.
It's not like the movie Taken or Sound of Freedom.
Right.
Like a lot of the youth who are trafficked now are going home at night.
Yep.
They're going to school. Like it doesn't fit this mold. And a lot of times we don't know. One of the things like along those lines too is I've spent a lot of time trying to understand those who cause the harm, who cause the sexual harm. And why do they? And I think this is like pretty crazy to some advocates in our space, but I feel like I have a lot of empathy for them too. And I see many of them as victims, where before I saw them as monsters. And one of the things I did once was I helped with a research project, and I went to Germany where they have legalized prostitution. Yeah. So the commercial sex trade has exploded there, and sex trafficking has become significantly worse. But I sat down with sex buyers and I interviewed them. Oh my gosh, I still have nightmares sometimes about some of the things that I heard from them. There were the monsters that I met and heard the callousness and the misogyny and the hatred and the entitlement that they felt. But there were also like so many of these men who at young ages were given pornography and told like, this is how you act as a man, whose fathers or grandfathers brought them to a brothel for their first sexual experience, whose fathers and grandfathers or in their military service said like, this is what it means to be a man and you should, buy sex. Like that, I think that's also like, they're somewhat a victim too. And we need to look at that. And my perspective in all of this is I want to end sexual abuse and exploitation. And really the only way to end it is to get those who cause the harm to stop causing the harm. And we can help those who are being harmed, but that's really going to just be trying to manage the problem. And as soon as we help some, many more are going to take their place as long as the demand for exploitation is there and growing. So, my particular work in this space is trying to get upstream as solutions. And I think really trying to understand why predominantly men think it's okay to go buy and use and abuse women and then affect that. That also drives a lot of solutions too, like listening to everyone involved, those who have been harmed and those who cause the harm. It gives us like the right exact blueprint for what we need to do.
Sure. No, I agree 100%. I think it's really difficult sometimes to walk the line because there are so many emotions involved. I mean, for you too, like I understand that there are people that cannot be in that space because of their own experiences. And I 100% respect that. But I agree that the phrase hurt people is 100% true. And I think people assume that phrase is thrown out to, justify somebody's actions. And I think it's more for human understanding to say, okay, I understand that you have been hurt and you are now expressing yourself in the way that you were hurt, right? And basically the only way you know how, or the way you've been shown or taught. We are all accountable for our own actions. Yes. And so allowing somebody a vein of empathy or a sliver of grace is not at all saying, and we're totally okay with what you're doing. But I agree. And I know like even just economically, which I know is not the purpose here, but even just economically, preventative work is always less expensive and always less cumbersome than restorative work.
Exactly.
Because after the damage is done, it's there for the rest of your life. And it's passed on, through generations. And you need people to actively step in and say, I'm not going to continue this cycle for it to actually stop. But it's so difficult to cut it off at the root.
It's so difficult. But we're making progress. You shared earlier about anger being like a very important driver for action often. I think say like mixing anger with hope.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of hope in all of this. Just an example, like what the research is showing and what the sex buyers say is that when like one thing that's easy for us to do is like expose them when they like face public exposure of their actions. For many of them, they will stop. So like one of like really powerful ways when like police send a letter home to them and they say like, this car was involved in a sex trafficking or prostitution stuff,
Really?
you know, like then like who's going to get that letter? Their wife might get it. It suddenly becomes this like barrier for them acting. Like, doesn't that give you hope? Like that kind of simple to action can have such an impact at curbing this really harmful behavior. There's a number of other things like that too. So like, let's be angry and start acting, but then let's like see the hope, and because that's how we get to solutions.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, anger is just very circular if you don't have anything to look forward to. So absolutely. Absolutely. And just like, I think we have visions in our head of who victims are, I think we also have images in our head of who perpetrators are or who abusers are. And that's not always the case either. And so, you may not know what somebody's, journey into this was or what is going to cause them to stop. It may be a letter home, which is kind of amazing.
I know. Like, let's all do that.
Yeah, right? Yeah. No, go ahead.
Well, you commented, here's a story that like really brought anger and now it's turned to hope. So we have a law center and we have started filing civil lawsuits against a number of the big tech companies and the pornography companies for hosting child sexual abuse material or image-based sexual abuse. Because of that, what happens is we have plaintiffs or clients that come to us and they've had their abuse that be filmed and it's uploaded to all of these platforms. And so we send cease and desist or takedown requests on their behalf to some of these platforms so that their abuse comes down. One of our clients, she was sex trafficked by her husband, who is in prison for trafficking her. Like, we have all this evidence. That is really rare, actually, that he would make it to prison. Like, why do survivors have to fight so hard for any justice? But amazingly for her, it worked and she got out. So we had like this perfect case. Like, here's the like proof. And we send a letter to Google because images of her were still showing up in videos in Google Images and Google Video. And they literally, this is the refreshing part, they wrote back and they said, we see no signs of coercion, of force, fraud, or coercion in these images, so we're not going to take it down. Wow. The attorney on our team like lost her mind. She met with Google's like attorney and one of their advocates, and she's like, what the?
Yeah.
Do you know anything about sex trafficking? Like, of course you don't see signs. But you know what? The reality was like her husband was standing in the back corner holding the video, like about to beat her if she didn't smile for the camera. Right. This is like something we hear so much from these companies is we don't see signs of non-consent. Like, you almost never will see that. And even if you see the like extreme violence, we're made to think like it's just for show. Right. They consented to that extreme violence and torture. So anyway, the good news is, and we've had many follow-up meetings with Google since, and we brought survivors to like help explain their experiences to teach these leaders at Google like what it was like for them. Yeah, of course they're smiling in front of the camera. But Google like changed their processes and policies. They've made it way, way easier for survivors to submit requests to take it down. Like one link that's relatively easy to find. And they've shifted things to listen to survivors first and not like put the burden on survivors to have to prove that they didn't consent. Like, they're not agreeing first with the criminal uploader of the content. They're agreeing first with the people who are depicted. So that's like a massive change.
Finally.
I know.
It's like, amazing.
It's like their vision of what the perpetrator was.
Sure.
And their vision of what a victim is.
Oh, yeah.
So it was off.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when we talk about the systems that are in place, they're not for women. And so, unfortunately, women are most often victims. And the burden of proof is left to victims. And unfortunately, we give the benefit of the doubt to the people that have the power to,
exactly. People have the money.
Yeah.
Happen to be men. Because the issues I fight are gendered. It is a gendered problem.
Yeah. I mean, you would fight as hard for any men that were to become victims, but overwhelmingly, you're seeing women and children.
And even when it is men, who are the victims, which it is, and LGBT individuals too, like make up so much of the victims. Those causing the harm tend to still be men.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Exactly. Amazing. How do you keep your hope in this? You've been working in this for a long time.
Yeah.
I assume you have some direct access to people that survivors and, you've already shared a few things. So how do you take care of yourself as you're working in this line of work, but also keep your hope to keep moving forward?
Talking to you just brought me lots of hope, like remembering all these really incredible experiences of like, we made a difference together. That gives me hope. I think realizing that you can change Google and Apple and Meta and Hilton, like we can make a difference there. And we're not so like in opposition of each other. And that brings so much hope. Seeing survivors flourishing. I mean, I think we're not on the front lines. We're not doing direct services. When we're engaging with survivors, it's usually like they've been out of the life. They've gone through a lot of steps towards their healing journey. And what I see is like they're engaging in the advocacy brings like even more healing for them, for many of them.
Yeah.
And that brings me so much hope. Seeing, I can't measure how many people didn't fall into.
Sure.
That's the hard part about prevention. But I think a lot are not falling into the harm because of our work. So that gives me hope. But also, I have 5 kids.
You do not have 5 kids. Oh my gosh.
And I have
You
an
look
amazing
amazing.
husband. Oh, you're sorry. I still look pregnant, I think.
No, you don't.
But I mean, they bring the most hope. Yeah. I think, seeing their innocence and their their playfulness and how they see the world, the hope that they have in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that is probably why I can keep doing this.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's actually incredible because I don't think everybody's made to do what you do. And I think that's okay. Like, I think we all have different giftings and we all have different purposes. And so it's not any sort of like bad or good, but I do think it's incredible that you found something that you not only are very good at, but you are like personally flourishing as well while you're doing it. I think that's really special.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I still mess up. Like, I work all the time. I love working on this stuff. Like, I don't sleep or exercise well, I need to get better.
I can imagine, but I can guarantee you we are all in the same place
I feel
there.
like I'm not alone.
You are not. You are not. Doesn't matter the sphere or the sector.
It would help.
Yeah. Well, it would help for all of us. So PSA. Yeah, exactly. Everybody. So going back to, you mentioned you went to Germany to interview because they legalized sex work. Because you deal with a lot of the policy and stuff around sexual exploitation, what is your kind of opinion on legalization versus decriminalization versus what we have in place now, et cetera?
Yeah. Okay, so there's really like 4 kind of legal models. So there's what America has now, which we call prohibition, except for in some counties in Nevada. And then there's decriminalized, where it's kind of a free-for-all and people can do whatever they want. It's unregulated. Legalized is where it's supposed to be regulated, but like almost never is it regulated. So it's pretty much the same as decrim. And then there's partial decrim, also known as the Nordic model or the equality model. And this is what we advocate for. So the point with this is that those who are harmed, those who are being prostituted or exploited, they are not treated as criminals, and instead they're given exit services and support to help them in whatever ways they might need that help. And then, but those who cause the harm, the sex buyers, the sex traffickers, the brothel keepers, they do face criminal charges. And we would say even also income-based fines are really important. And then also together with this model is like a whole educational piece for kind of society at large to help them understand the realities of prostitution and commercial sex, that it cannot be made safe. There's no way that we can regulate it enough to make it safe for the person who's being exploited.
Yeah.
And that also when you have the commercial sex trade, there's a whole host of other harms that and crimes that are associated with it. So that's the model that we advocate for. We amazingly, we worked on legislation with allies and many survivors, and it just passed in Maine this year. So Maine is the first state to have essentially like a Nordic model style solution.
Wow.
Yeah, it just happened. It's like going into effect and being implemented like soon.
Amazing.
And the thing is that a lot of other countries have this model, and the research is like, people will try to confuse you, but it's very clear that when there's a partial decrim, the commercial sex trade shrinks.
Mm-hmm.
And there's help and services for those harmed, and those who cause the harm. It's many won't cause the harm because there's a deterrent.
Right.
But when you have full decriminalization or legalization, the sex trade explodes. Like, just look at Nevada, for example, where some counties it's legalized. What happens is, like, people think the whole state of Nevada prostitution is legal, and there's sex tourism there all the time. Like, tons of people are going to Nevada to engage in commercial sex because they think it's okay. And in order to keep up, there's not enough people who want to be in the commercial sex trade who are choosing that proactively. And so there's force, fraud, coercion, bringing people across state lines. There's sex trafficking is happening in order to keep up with that demand. And so the whole industry has grown. And we would argue by default, the state of Nevada has become the trafficker. We're suing the state of Nevada with 2 lawsuits, actually, on behalf of survivors of the commercial sex trade in Nevada's legal brothels.
Wow.
And there's some crazy things, like in Nevada, if you test, this is so crazy. In one of our lawsuits, we outlined this. If you test positive for an STD or STI and you're, engaged in commercial sex work, the state makes you stay at the brothel. They don't let you leave. I mean, what? I know. What? It's so crazy. In another county, they use the funding that's like money they get from the registrations of these women in the brothels and the tax revenue. They use it to buy the police cars.
What?
I know. Like, Nevada itself has become the trafficker, and they're so reliant on the money that they're making. And that's what happens in systems like this. In Germany, it's no longer, they fixed this, thankfully. But for a long time, like, if you didn't pay your taxes, you could not get out of the brothels. You had to pay the taxes until you could get out.
Oh,
like,
my gosh.
Or another was, if you don't have a job and you're looking for employment, in Germany, they have like really strict rules around unemployment, stricter than here. And you have to like get a job. So you call this like centralized place and they'll say, here are some job opportunities. Like, you have to pick one. And they were literally telling people, like, you can go be a prostitute.
Oh, jeez.
You could go work in a brothel. What? Like, this country itself, the nation itself became the trafficker.
Yeah.
And that's not okay. Anyway, our argument is we need to treat those who are being harmed with empathy and with help. And we need to do all we can. Hardly anybody is like dreaming and wanting to be involved in sex work.
Right.
The few that are usually the loud vocal voices saying, this is so great, empowering, I love it. But that does not represent the majority of those who are involved. And so we need to like just serve and help them.
Yeah.
While also shrinking.
Yeah. And I think that's a great explanation.
I talk so long. I'm sorry.
No. Please, I love it. Truly. I think it's a really important distinction to make. And I truly think it's something that, again, unless you're in the sphere of advocacy, we don't think about. And so we don't think about the fact that, there's a difference between total decriminalization and partial, because when you do partial, you're criminalizing those in power. Because so often the mostly women are not the ones, empowered in this experience. And though there may be a few, there are loads of other issues that come, as you said, with commercial sex work, other criminal issues, health issues, whatever. But most importantly is the fact that the Johns are the ones in power. The pimps are the ones in power. And so to be able to say, and I think I know that women who are in sex work are specifically targeted for violent crime because society at large thinks that they deserve whatever they get.
Exactly. Oh, yes. That's so wrong. We have to change that paradigm.
Right. So to have that turned around and to have women who are involved in sex work to be empowered to at least report when things happen to them and know that hopefully they will be listened to and taken seriously is a huge step in the right direction. So we've been talking about sexual exploitation in a very broad sense, but I kind of want to maybe tackle some myths. If you see common misconceptions about sexual exploitation, I think there has been a lot of talk about it, especially in the last 10 years or so. It keeps getting more and more, but I think there's still a lot of misunderstanding about what sexual exploitation is, even sex trafficking. Again, it's not Taken, the movie, it could be something totally different. So would you be able to kind of share some myths maybe you've seen that the general public believe about sexual exploitation that just aren't true?
Yeah. Well, I think a key one, forgive me because you've used this term, I'm not calling you out.
Okay.
But the term sex work is one that has caused a lot of misconceptions. And it's really completely masked what's really happening. It's not sex and it's not work. It's not a job like any other. It's not like waitressing. It's not it isn't a job. And it's not sex because there's an ounce, as soon as money comes in, there's no mutuality. There's no respect. There's no giving. There's no all the things that come with intimacy and sexuality. It's missing. And the only reason it's happening is because of this money component or a component of something's given as value, whether it's housing or clothes or safety or money. And so I think that term that's become so popular and it's become what we all think we have to use in order to give dignity to those who are in the commercial sex trade. By using those words, we're basically telling everybody and young people who are learning about these issues, that's not sexual exploitation, that it's consensual, that it's what they want, that it's just a job, that it's a safe job. And it's no way safe.
Yeah.
It's not it's not like OSHA is coming in and saying, and so that is a misconception. And it's about language that we use. But on the converse side, derogatory terms, horrible words, I'm not even going to say to you here, that we have as a society used to describe the commercial sex trade and those who are being exploited and harmed are causing, I would even say maybe even more drastic harm than that sex work terms. So language is really important. It's very important.
Just real quick, that's really important. And thank you for bringing it up because I guess, I am thinking, okay, I'm trying to use words in solidarity with people, but is that the truth? Is that correct? And it sounds like it's not. And so I think it's, what you're explaining makes a lot of sense. It sanitizes what the experience is and really diminishes someone's survivorhood, and what they went through.
Survivors hate that term is used to describe what happened to them.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what do they prefer to be used if you're
Survivors,
talking about? Okay.
What lived experience experts? There's no real strong answer for those who are actively in the commercial sex trade. I think they're going to say they want to be called sex workers. But this goes into this whole thing of the impact that's having on them. Those who are being sexually exploited in the sex trade are also going through significant mental, emotional, psychological,
Absolutely.
Physical harm. And some common things are they disassociate. They have to tell themselves that they're consenting and that they want this in order to just get through the day to day. There's all these things. And so I will tell you, if I'm meeting with someone and they want me to call them that, I will. But I think just as a society of saying this is what it is. Because we're using the term sex work now so broadly, we're starting to see newspapers and press media, they'll refer to child sex trafficking as like a child sex worker.
Oh gosh.
It's so horrible. But that's like the natural, they're just a child sex. We're seeing it even in academia. They're using this phrase in academic work. So I don't have like super solid answers. I use the term commercial sex trade. I say those who are being prostituted, the prostituted person, the person who's, being exploited.
I love that distinction too. It's not a prostitute. It's someone who's being prostituted.
When I hear that word, my heart breaks.
I know. And that's what something I'm like, I don't want to say the word prostitute. I know, I know that's not the term, right? Or some of the even worse ones. And so, yeah, I 100% agree with you. And thank you for talking about it at length as I continue to grill you, because I just was curious if there was a term that was supposed to be used, because of course I want the language to be right. I don't want to sanitize somebody else's experience by any means. So, but that's really important. So commercial sex trade, person being prostituted, those are good phrases to use.
Yeah, that's what we use. Another myth. Oh, there's so many. I mean, you touched on some, like those who cause the harm. I mean, okay, here's one. The sex buyer. The reality is that the frequent sex buyers tend to be white, middle class, making more than $100,000, $200,000 and married with children. Like those are generally, they live in the suburbs.
Yeah.
That's like the most common sex buyer. But yet in like the arrest stories in the news, it's always like black and brown, kind of gangster-like, or immigrants who are pictured as being the buyer. And yeah, they're buyers too. The reality is it doesn't exactly fit into a mold, but those buying at the higher frequency, which means they're the ones causing the most harm, which means they're the ones driving the whole marketplace, are white, middle class, expendable income, married with kids. And we're not giving any credence to them. We're not showing them. We're not exposing them. So we have a completely misunderstanding of what the problem is. And we don't realize it's the pastor, or it's the judge, or it's the doctor, or it's the teacher that are also doing it. That's a really big one that I just want to shake into people.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. No notes. That was good.
Likewise, okay, similarly with who's the victim. Now, I am saying anyone can become a victim. This could happen to anyone, and it does. And it does, especially with the internet, with the fact that now there's such easy access to our youth and vulnerable people online. It doesn't matter if they have money or involved parents or whatever. These predators see vulnerabilities and they pounce. So I want you to hear me say, yes, it can be anyone, but our movement, overwhelmingly is depicting the victim as a white little girl. And it isn't a white little girl. And the reality is that those who are harmed the most are people who are way more vulnerable and marginalized. They are Black and brown. They are LGBT. They are coming from broken families or homes where they don't have the support that they need. And that's reality. And so as our movement is just depicting it as the white little girl, first of all, it's not all children. It's happening to adults. It's happening to teenagers. And so the visuals that our movement tends to use are casting a lot of misperceptions. I think that's massively problematic. And even if you look at you see two victims, and one is a white little girl and one is a Black little girl. How are they treated? And I have so many cases where the white little girl gets help and services and therapy and all these things around her. But the Black little girl, who's still a little girl, is sent to prison and treated as a monster when really she has been so horrifically abused. And we have to change the dichotomy, how we think of the victims.
Yes.
And their fault in this. We put blame on the little Black girl and we say that the little white girl had, what are we thinking?
Right.
What are we thinking?
Black and brown and any minority community have it coming in some way, or they've left a door open for this to happen to them, and white people haven't.
Or the Black and brown people are way more sexual. I mean, if you look at, this is very common. If you look at the pornography of today, we super hypersexual, and not just pornography, images in general, we super hypersexualize Black and brown people, young people. We hypersexualize them in all of our media. So that's why we think of them as like, when they're the victim, we think of them as like, they had it coming. They wanted it. They did it. They were the like siren who like led them away. Literally, this is what we see again and again by police, by judges, the media.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so happy you asked me these questions. It's like, yeah.
I'm glad. Yeah. I mean, I think we have a lot of what keeps us from moving forward is our own biases that we don't even realize that we have. Because I don't think anybody would put those words, like say those words, if, given the opportunity, they wouldn't say like, oh, well, I definitely believe white people more. But we don't realize that we're doing it. Yeah, exactly. We're just doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was looking at the posters out here, and I know that you guys do this. You guys put out every year. You still do it?
Yeah.
Okay. The Dirty Dozen.
The Dirty Dozen list.
Yes. So can you tell me what the Dirty Dozen list is and how you put it together?
So we name every year 12 mainstream facilitators of sexual abuse and exploitation. In many cases, they're profiting from it. And so we tend to focus on companies, but sometimes there's like other drivers. So this year, we just released it a month ago for 2024. And within the Dirty Dozen list, we create it's basically 12 campaigns against companies. And we have web pages set up for each. And we have identified what they need to change in order to come off the list and in order to be on the side of human dignity rather than sexual harm. And we make it super easy for grassroots leaders to get involved. You can send like we said earlier, you can send that email to the executives. I still do the same thing, get their top emails.
Everybody's heard how much of an impact that has. So
massive impact. Yeah. That's why I love this campaign. It has so much impact. And we send letters to these companies and we meet with them and we try to help them understand how they're part of the problem. And the reality is there's been so many victories because of it. I mean, we tried to count them up last year because it was the 10th year last year.
Oh, wow.
So we're on 11. And there were over 150 pretty significant victories from
That's amazing.
Over the 10 years. Yeah. So one that recently happened is Google agreed to blur nudity, sexually explicit and sexually violent images and Google Images. For everyone. So many people, we had a little girl. This is what started the campaign. Yeah. You like stories. What started the campaign with Google on this was a little girl and her mom called me and she was in third grade and she was looking for an image for the front page of her school report. And she typed into Google Images, happy Black teen. She just wanted a picture. And she was exposed to horrific, extremely violent, racist pornography. That really scarred her. And so they called us and they were like, how is this allowed? And we said, we don't know, but let's go to Google together. And Google first told us there's no way, we're not doing anything about that. That affects algorithms and First Amendment. And we were like, what? And then we just kept sending them more examples. And when COVID happened, and all our kids went virtual and they all were given these devices, we just got so many more of these stories and cases happening. And finally, Google heard and they did the right thing. It only took 7 years, but so that's the Dirty Dozen list. Another that I really love is Amazon. Amazon and Etsy were both selling child sex dolls, and they were selling thousands of them, and they were selling many other sex dolls. And I can't convey to you the impact that those have. People who are using these sex dolls, it doesn't stop them from acting out on a real child. No, the research and what little research there is, but lots of anecdotes, they're going to act out on a real child. And Amazon was selling it all and they're making money. And, we got them to stop. Both Etsy and Amazon. So Amazon was 2 years ago and Etsy was last year. They stopped selling those. And so that's the Dirty Dozen list. It makes a big difference. And all of you should go to dirtydozenlist.com to help me.
And send some emails. Absolutely.
I just sent them through for all 12 and it literally took me less than 10 minutes. So.
Perfect. Yeah. I'm looking at posters on their wall. But some of them are really you wouldn't think that they would be on that list, right? And I think it again speaks to the misconceptions. Mm-hmm. I saw Amazon and I'm like, well, okay, yeah, like I can get on board with that because it's Amazon, but like, why? I didn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think people understand, or we as a public don't necessarily understand how far reaching.
Exactly. That's the point of it. Is
Yeah.
to see like it's so connected to so many things that we do, and we can put a stop to it. And these mainstream companies that we're using like every day, I can't even imagine my life without Amazon. Like, we should demand better of them.
Yeah.
They should step up. They're stepping up in other issues, you know, for the environment, for trade, for, you know, all these other good things. They should stand up for human dignity as well.
Yeah.
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 So join me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, I love it.
So this year, I'll tell you two of my, like, we got to change them. So one is Roblox, which is like an extremely popular gaming platform for kids. And it was essentially made initially for kids under 13, which is important because most tech platforms are for older than 13. They have 12.8 million 8-year-olds on their platform every day.
Wow.
Yeah. But their parental controls are so terrible and so lacking. Like, even if you go turn them on, which they're not on by default. Why are they not on by default? They are getting the date of their users, which also any kid can just start. You don't even need an email. You just go in. You don't need parents' permission. It's so easy to start it. So that's a problem. But then also the kids tell you what year they were born, and the parental controls are not by default on. Dumb. But then if you, as a parent, find out they have it and you go turn it on, you have to go to 2 different places. And even if you turn it on, when kids are in like specific games, adults can still engage with them. Even though you turn off the like, can they talk to strangers? There's still ways for them to talk to you. But you as a parent think they're safe because you flip that switch on. It's just so messed up. And we represent 2 little children who are groomed. They were targeted and groomed on Roblox. The most horrific things happened to them. Our law center represents them. But there's like thousands of these cases. You could just Google search this. Like, the FBI is putting them on the like biggest warning list. All law enforcement is saying like, do not let your kids on Roblox. And Roblox still is not fixing that. They've made millions and millions of billion dollars because of the kids on their platform. Not only are they not fixing it, but they've like now said that they're going to have like a Tinder type version of Roblox. And is it going to be separated from the kids? No.
What?
Like, what? I know, what? We can change Roblox. And the other one is Apple. So there's a couple of things with Apple, but one in particular is the Apple App Store. The ratings are pretty much a complete joke. And anyone can go in and you can turn on, you can add your app and you self-select the rating level. So it's happening, and there's like really no oversight, and there's really no warning about what the dangers are on that app. So like an example is, I downloaded an app for my 4-year-old. It was rated for 4 and up. But in the app was YouTube, like embedded into the app, and then you click on it and you can go straight and you can just have complete open access to the internet through that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And that's like an unfiltered internet. Like my internet, my home is filtered, like the platforms. But if you go in this back door, there's all these backdoor ways. Or there's like explicit apps that are rated for 4. And also those aren't even supposed to be on the app store. Like these Nudify apps. There's tons of these Nudify apps, and they're being uploaded to the Apple App Store for age 9 and up or 4 and up. So what are our kids doing in our schools?
Oh,
they're downloading it, and they're like, the bullying in the last 3 months, it's so horrible. And Apple could fix this if they just would, fix the App Store ratings. And then the problem with Apple is their parental controls, which are very frustrating and annoying, and it takes 32 steps to turn on in 4 different places, but they are contingent on the app ratings. So if you turn on the parental controls and you want it to be set for the 9-year-old, you think it's okay. But if all the apps that are bad are rated for 9, do you see the problem?
Yes.
It's like, comment, just fix this. But I will say a victory with Apple.
Okay.
So we were really upset about the parental controls thing, right? Why does it take 32 steps? And so a partial victory is that last year, and they were on the Dirty Dozen list for this last year, but last year they rolled out a change in if you pair your child's device with the parent's device, then automatically the parental controls turn on.
Wow.
But what about all the youth who's parents don't have an Android or who don't understand the pairing or who aren't involved. Like, why not protect those youth? And Apple knows the ages of those youth because to have an Apple ID, you put it in. Like, it's just common sense.
Yeah. And that's what gets me, right? It's like, it feels like it should be common sense.
Yeah.
And what's so hard is I know obviously money and power are huge drivers and they can lead us to do really terrible things. So it's like, what is preventing people from taking necessary steps to make things safer, make things less explicit, to regulate things like AI and, and all the free speech warriors are like, you can't do anything about that. But I imagine, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was revenge porn has become such a huge thing. And now with AI, and you brought it up, it is horrifying. I cannot imagine the mental health rates that are going to plummet because of stuff like this. Yeah. Yeah. So are money and power the essential barriers to change, and who is preventing change, I guess?
Yeah. Oh, good questions. So money. The problem right now is that these companies, they have no incentive. They're not going to make more profit by designing with safety in mind. And all of us are still going to use their tools, right? Because we love them. I love Apple. Like, can I even function, And so I'm going to still buy their stuff. Like, am I going to buy it for my kids? No, but like eventually. Okay, so the problem is that there's no like financial incentive. They're not gaining profit from it. So it's not a priority to them. But making the like flashy next design on the new Apple phone is going to drive sales. So that's one of the barriers that we are facing. And until they're compelled or their bottom line is impacted, they're not going to change. And that's the reason why at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, we started a law center a couple years ago, is because we were like, we're going to sue them. We're going to hit them where it hurts, which is the pocketbook. Because that's the only way that they respond. Like, yes, we have victories with all these grassroots campaigns, but we need like industry-wide, we need system-wide changes at mass scale. And these like smaller campaigns are just, I'm tired, I think, of them. So we're suing them for that. And then that's why also we're fighting for policy that would make them change. And in some of the policies, it brings like, fines and other like impacts to their bottom line. Now, the power issue is, there's a lot to say there, but I'm going to just say something that I think is really sad, but it's hopeful. And that's that those in power are not immune for what's coming with AI. Their children, like, I can't do anything to stop someone from making deepfakes of my little babies. I can't. There's nothing I can do. Like, I can do things like not let them have a phone and to keep them from being exposed. Like, I could kind of do something there, but there's nothing I can do to stop like the AI generated exploitation and augmented that's coming. And it's going to happen to those in power. It already is happening. And that's why, like, I would argue that Congress they have 3 bills right now around emerging technology. It took them 25 years to do anything for child safety. But I'm like, we're involved in those bills. I'm so happy. I'm like, yes, Congress, good job. Keep doing it. But I think the change agent is people in power are being victimized too. I hate that. But that, I think, is going to change everything.
Yeah. I mean, oh man, I hate that so much too. But you're right. You're right. And that is unfortunately compelling to them.
Yeah, it's compelling. Yeah. And, when Taylor Swift, this horrible, horrible thing happened with Taylor Swift and the deep fakes, that got a lot of people's attention, realizing it can happen to them. It can happen to anyone. So there's hope in that. But we're going to go through immense trauma.
Yes.
Before it gets better.
Right. So again, the conversation around restoring something that's been broken versus just preventing it.
Look at this. Okay. And also on our Dirty Dozen list year is Microsoft's GitHub. Like, if you're not a tech person, you might not know what it is, but it's like the primary platform that hosts like tons of code and like open source type things. And Microsoft owns it. And we believe that like 90% of the AI generated CSAM and AI generated exploitation images, they're all coming from code hosted on the open platform by GitHub. Look what we could do if Microsoft will do something about this. Yeah. It would make such a huge difference. Will we stop deepfakes completely? No, but it would become so much harder, less. It's the same thing as shrinking the commercial sex trade. We want to make it harder, smaller. And if we could get Microsoft to change, we could solve a lot of the what we see coming at us. It's already coming, but it's going to get way worse if Microsoft doesn't act.
Yeah. Because I feel like the agencies and organizations that are created for this are just constantly overwhelmed. There is never enough.
We're so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And it's going to get worse I've just read an article of a teacher who he was just arrested with millions of images of his students that he created an AI generated CSAM of. And he did it so fast. And the reality is he shared those images. He surely shared those images. So while the police found him, those images are now out there forever, probably.
Yeah.
Although I believe we can build some AI tools that stop those kinds of images from being uploaded again. Also, we could say if you're a website that's going to host sexually explicit material, you should verify consent and age of everyone who's depicted. X and Discord and Reddit, who allow porn. They're actually pornography companies too. People don't think of them as that, but they have policies that allow prostitution openly on their platform and allow pornography. If they just made sure that everyone depicted was truly consenting and truly of age, it would significantly solve these problems.
Yes. Yeah, majorly.
They're also on the dirty dozen list.
But again, it's there's no incentive to do that, because then people will stop using and they don't make as much money.
Yeah, well, we're going to get incentive. We're going to pass legislation.
Good.
And we're going to sue them until they change it.
Well, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Sue them all. That's amazing. This is all, there's so much good information here. Your personal experiences are incredible. The stories that you've walked, the survivors you've walked alongside, but just the work in general and what it takes to do this. And I think we've gotten a little insight into, because it is so overwhelming and comprehensive. And we've just taken a little bite here today. But I'm so grateful that you were so open about it and are willing to talk about it. Because, sometimes you just want to scream it from the rooftops that just pay attention, please, because you could actually make a difference here. Did we cover everything that you wanted to cover?
I didn't have an agenda. I was what is she going to ask me?
No. Sometimes I just ask, if there was something you wanted me to ask you that I didn't, if there was a avenue you wanted to walk down that we didn't, I want to have an opportunity for that. But
thank you. I would just say, for those, two things. One, you can make a difference. You can make a difference. And you don't have to be go challenge the Barnes and Noble manager I did in person. But sharing things on social media, sending those e-messages, those things matter. Having conversations with your children, your husband, your neighbors. You can make a difference with those things. So please don't feel like you can. And then the second is, if you feel called to do this work more, you're want to learn more, come to the C Summit, the Coalition to End Sexual Exploitation Summit in August.
Okay. Yeah. Is that in DC? Okay.
And you can find information at endexploitationsummit.com.
Okay. Awesome. We'll put links to everything in the show notes as well. So make it easy for everybody. Yes, that too. All the websites and etc. So I do ask a question at the end of every episode. You look nervous. Don't look nervous. So through the lens of your experiences, what does compassion mean to you?
For me, I would say it's listening and being with people and their experiences, empathizing with them. But I think it's taking it a step further, and it's embracing the responsibility to support, help, take action, something like, but I think compassion isn't just like listening. I think there's an action with it, and it's a responsibility, honestly, that we have to take it to the next level. It looks different for everyone, but
sure. No, I love that. Yeah, that's great. One of my favorite quotes is William Wilberforce.
Oh, yeah.
Almost said John Wilberforce. I don't know why. William Wilberforce, which is, you may choose to look the other way, but you may never again say that you did not know. And it slaps me across the face every time because it really is a convicting statement to say, well, once I know something about it, I have to do something about it. And I truly do believe that some of us disengage because we know that, because we feel that.
We do.
And, I have compassion for that as well, because I think sometimes people are just doing the best that they can. But I agree. I think that opening yourself up to other people's experiences is an important part of humanity, and then taking it a step further and standing in solidarity or doing something about the issue at large, whatever that looks like. I mean, and that could look a million different ways. We all have different talents and giftings, and whatever is a huge part of compassion. So yeah, I agree.
Thank you. Oh, I'm eager to go listen to. I've listened to a couple of your episodes, but I'm like, now I want to hear what everyone says. Yeah.
It's been a really interesting question, and so fascinating to hear based on obviously people's experiences, but like where they are in life currently, like what season of life they're in, if they have like the kind of experiences they've lived through.
Definitely.
Yeah, so it's really fascinating. And there have been some really cool answers. So I feel like one of these days I have to just like clip together a bunch of the answers and release that.
That should be a whole episode.
Yes. Maybe for I'm coming up on 50 actually.
Yeah, you probably have enough. And you could have a speaker just talk about compassion, the science and the research, like Brene Brown. I mean, yeah. But like her,
please,
have you seen Atlas of the Heart? Have you read that? Oh, it's so powerful.
I love her work. Yeah. So that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for doing this, for sitting down with me. You're a very busy lady. So I really appreciate your time, truly. And I hope that, people will maybe find their calling through listening to your episode. So.
Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to The Human Experience. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, share it with your friends and family, share it on social media, and rate and review it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can also support the podcast financially by going to my website, thehxpod.com, linked in the show notes, and clicking on Donate. It takes a lot of time and resources to create this podcast, so every little bit helps. Everyone has a story, and I'd love to hear yours. So be sure to check out the show notes for more information about how to stay in touch. Do good and love well.